My fiancé orchestrated my abduction, demanding that I relinquish my guaranteed admission in exchange for a kidney for a false heiress. As long as you provide a kidney for Wanwan, I shall consent to marry you. He is convinced that I, the true heiress and a so-called masochist, would be willing to comply with all his demands in pursuit of the affection of those around me. Even if I endure bullying, abduction, and the extraction of my kidney, I would still heed his every command without a hint of regret. Lying in the hospital bed, my complexion pale and my eyes brimming with unshed tears, I gazed at him, yet my gaze was directed beyond his presence. Police. Everyone. Raise your hands. For goodness sake, I hail from a society governed by the rule of law, who wishes to witness your desperate pursuit of love. One with a thunderous bang, a cadre of police officers stormed into the hospital room. Police. Everyone, raise your hands. My ostensible fiancé, Shun Chen, exuded an air of haughty disdain, scoffing, "Huh, do you even know who I am? You blind fools." In an instant, the sound of clink echoed as the officers secured handcuffs around his wrists, their gleam outshining even the diamond watch he wore. "Stop the pretense. I was the one who detained you last time. Last time it was for public disorder, and now you've escalated to illegal confinement and unlicensed medical practice?" The officers, utterly bemused, regarded him with a look of incredulity. From behind Shin Chen, Qinwan, witnessing his impending arrest, cried out, "Who are you? How dare you intrude upon a hospital room?" The police, momentarily taken aback by her audacity, glanced down at their uniforms, their eyes betraying a profound confusion and astonishment at the conspicuous police emblazoned upon their attire. I couldn't help but chuckle softly, teasingly remarking, "Sister, don't you recognize them? These are the police uncles." Forgive her, for in the realm of this narrative, the NPCs are notoriously devoid of law and logic.
2.
I found myself transported into the world of a novel titled Sour Candy Sadness 6 months prior, a tale that encapsulates the pangs of youth, the facades of wealth, and the depths of tumultuous love. The system informed me that my mission was to orchestrate a conclusion that would leave the parents, brother, and the male lead, Shin Chen, consumed by lifelong regret for their favoritism towards the false heiress. After perusing the entirety of the lengthy and tedious narrative, I could not suppress my incredulity, retorting, "You mean to say I must adhere to this absurd plot, enduring torment for my family, sacrificing for the female antagonist, only to ultimately succumb to despair and die of cancer in order to fulfill the ending?" The system replied, "The previous 17 travelers followed the narrative to achieve their endings." I scoffed silently, weighing in my mind whether such a trade was worth it. After all, I had entered this world only after my demise in reality. If fulfilling my mission granted me a chance at rebirth, it would be a small price to pay. Yet, if my survival necessitated enduring such inhumane suffering and relinquishing my basic dignity, then death in the real world would seem inconsequential. Such is the mindset of a beleaguered worker. 3. According to the original text, as long as I follow the plot, after the female lead's demise, her soul will witness her family and Shin Chen grappling with their profound loss. They will frantically search for her, only to realize she has perished under their neglect. Subsequently, they will find themselves unable to focus on their careers, spiraling into bankruptcy. When the pampered false heiress absconds with their wealth, they will finally comprehend the folly of their ways, culminating in a lifetime of regret. Although I found the logic of this narrative dubious, I resolved to give it a try for the sake of revival. The first scene I found myself in was the female lead laboriously preparing a feast for her family, only to be met with endless criticism from the false heiress and her parents. "Sister, how pitiful it is that you grew up eating such fare. How could anyone possibly stomach these unappetizing dishes?" Qinwan sneered, her gaze filled with disdain as she looked at the humble spread. Though the female lead's parents refrained from vocal reproach, their expressions mirrored that of disdain. In the original narrative, upon hearing such words, the female lead's face flushed crimson, tears welling in her eyes, ultimately leading her to spend her hard-earned pocket money on takeout from a 5-star hotel. Thereafter, she began to learn to prepare exquisite ingredients such as abalone and lobster, truly assimilating into the lifestyle of the elite. As a reader, merely observing the scene was enough to induce a visceral reaction, yet experiencing it firsthand ignited a surge of indignation. There is a limit to what one can endure. Having been subjected to the horrors of a dismal cafeteria since childhood, I would consider myself fortunate to enjoy a meal of this nature. How could this family of gluttons dare to criticize?
Crash.
I swept my hands across the table, sending plates shattering to the ground, the shards mingling with the colorful remnants of the dishes, much like this family, in disarray. Since you look down upon the food I prepared, then do not eat it all. As a laborer bearing the brunt of capitalist oppression, I found myself ensnared in a narrative that only compounded my suffering. The more disconcerting thought was that while I received wages for my labor in reality, the original character was merely a servant in her own home, enduring disdain and washing the family's dirty laundry. For, caught unawares by my sudden transformation, the three of them froze in disbelief. Chin's father was the first to react, bellowing, "You country bumpkin, what madness are you unleashing?" Chin's mother swiftly delivered a slap across my face. Smack. The room fell silent, all eyes widening in shock. My head was turned from the force of the blow, and I caught a glimpse of Chin Wan's mocking expression. No one had dared to strike me in my life. Seizing the moment while they were still reeling, I swiftly overturned the table. As their attention was diverted, I delivered a powerful punch to Chin Mother's abdomen.
Fool.
Striking someone in the face leaves evidence of assault. A blow to the stomach, however, would yield no visible marks, no matter how one might scrutinize it.
5.
Taking advantage of Chin Mother's pain as she crouched on the floor, I dashed back to my room with lightning speed, locking the door behind me, and retrieved my old mobile phone to dial 110. As I fled, I even kicked Chin Wan's backside for good measure. At that moment, all thoughts of the narrative mission were cast aside. Those who willingly endure torment are fools. Regrettably, I could not educate Chin's father, which left me somewhat disheartened. The police arrived with remarkable swiftness. In less than 10 minutes, the three imbeciles from the Chin family, fuming with impotent rage outside my storage room, were met by the officers. Thus, the scene that greeted the police was as follows: a timid me, trembling in the storage room beneath the stairs, while the flimsy door quaked under the fury of the three. Unsurprisingly, we were all taken to the police station. Throughout the journey, I felt a twinge of anxiety. Just as I had begun to calm down, I realized that my actions had strayed far from the plot, pushing the conclusion further out of reach. Yet, recalling that slap, I found solace. At worst, I could complete the mission after today's debacle. 6. At the police station, the Chin family was adamant that I was at fault, claiming I had injured Chin Mother. They asserted that their actions were not abusive, that it was merely parental discipline, and that I was the one in the wrong. Observing their self-assured demeanor as they debated with the officers, I refrained from interjecting. Instead, I gazed up at the police with tear-filled eyes, adopting a pitiful expression as though I had been wronged. I know that after being swapped at birth, I grew up in the countryside, unloved by my parents. But that is not my fault. Officer, should a country dweller be subjected to ridicule and slander? At this moment, the police station was bustling with people, with officers and residents alike attending to various matters. A multitude of onlookers fell into an eerie silence, their prying, judgmental gazes fixated upon the Chin family. Many romance novels often indulge in tales of the poor outsmarting the rich, and this book was no exception. The author dedicated considerable time to painting the female lead's impoverished circumstances, portraying her as small-minded and unworthy of respect. Her evolution was depicted as a gradual assimilation into the refined lifestyle of the elite, earning the admiration of others. Yet, in reality, the vast majority of people in China hail from humble beginnings. Does society truly consist of nothing but scoundrels outside of the wealthy? The affluent themselves often originate from the same dirt-floored roots. What makes their bloodline so noble? And the so-called growth of the female lead merely transforms her from an obsequious country girl into an equally obsequious young lady of the manor? 7. Naturally, the police were not inclined to take their one-sided narrative at face value and suggested that we produce evidence of our mutual assault. After all, the red and swollen mark on my face served as the most compelling evidence of their maltreatment. Chin's mother shot me a fierce glance, her hand instinctively resting on her abdomen, still tender from the pain. Accompanied by a female police officer, she retreated to the adjacent room to gather evidence. How could this be? There is not a single mark on my stomach. This exemplifies the adage, the force was just right, leaving one bewildered yet unscathed. Such a powerful roar suggests that even a few more punches would reveal no injuries. Regret loomed large. I wished I had struck harder. The police insisted that should I wish to continue the examination for injuries, I could undergo imaging to ascertain if any internal damage had occurred. However, from the officers' impatient expressions, it was clear they had utterly lost faith in this arrogant, deceitful individual. After all, if no external bruises were evident, what could an X-ray possibly reveal? Had they discovered my fingerprints? Was there any evidence of my alleged assault? In this narrative realm, the protagonist's households are perpetually devoid of surveillance, a convenient plot device for the female antagonist to ensnare the heroine. Nonetheless, the unmistakable imprint of a slap on my face undoubtedly belonged to Chin's mother's filthy hands. Due to the protagonist being a minor and having suffered long-term abuse at the hands of her adoptive parents, the responsibility for her care now fell solely to her biological parents. Contemplating the narrative tasks that lay ahead, I ultimately acquiesced to the mediation proposed by the police station. As per their requirements, the Chin family was forbidden from demanding that I remain at home to perform household chores and was mandated to allow me to continue my education in accordance with legal stipulations. Indeed, at this juncture, the original protagonist had yet to enter high school and was unwittingly serving as a free maid in this villa. In the days that followed, our household became a revolving door of visitors. Nestled in the affluent district of the city, it was arguably one of the most well-governed areas. Within a mere week, we received visits from community police officers, representatives from the Women's Federation, the secretary of the neighborhood committee, and a host of retired, well-meaning elderly individuals from the community. They came in succession, conducting home visits and educating the Chin parents. Though they lamented their plight, the Chin couple dared not vent their frustrations in front of this assembly. Their glances towards me, laced with malice, were tempered by their trepidation. Clearly, I was no longer the naive pushover I once was. They were wary of my potential to summon reinforcements at a moment's notice. However, this development was hardly a boon for me, as the narrative had stagnated, leaving my progress at a standstill until my parents finally returned with their reinforcements, my biological brother, Chin Haonan, and my nominal fiancé, Shin Chen. Upon encountering their strikingly handsome faces, I couldn't help but internally scoff. What a pair of fools have arrived yet again. In the original text, the protagonist's so-called fiancé was a match arranged by the grandfather. The author elucidates that the grandfathers will dictated that only through the union of the Chin and Shin families could one inherit a 10% stake in the Chin corporation, along with other assets valued in the billions. Before the protagonist's arrival, everyone had accepted the engagement between Chin Wan and Shin Chen as a foregone conclusion. Yet, upon the protagonist's return home, everything changed. Shin Chen's parents, naturally more concerned about the Chin family's stake, swiftly declared that Shin Chen's fiancée was now the true daughter of the Chin family. Shin Chen, convinced of the protagonist's cunning intentions to usurp everything belonging to Chin Wan, embarked on a series of tumultuous and passionate encounters. Meanwhile, the protagonist's brother, Chin Haonan, harbored deep-seated animosity towards her, stubbornly believing that this rustic interloper had usurped the life of his beloved sister. Since Chin Wan's return, he had allied with his cronies to subject her to various trials and humiliations. Eventually, he fell into Chin Wan's deceitful machinations, leading to the loss of the remaining family assets. What kind of mental state does an author possess to consider these two imbeciles as the cream of the crop, the prodigies of the business world? Upon returning home, Chin Haonan gleaned the details of the police station's involvement from his parents' embellished accounts and devised a devious scheme. First, he confiscated my outdated phone under the pretense that I was prohibited from using it while attending school. Second, he curtailed my allowance, stipulating that I must earn it through household chores. Consequently, the police were left with no grounds for intervention. Of course, Chin Haonan did not perceive the fleeting look of discomfort that crossed Chin father and mother's faces. The author, in her attempt to showcase the protagonist's suffering, had established that Chin father and mother had never provided her with an allowance. Coming from a typical family, I could not comprehend the obsessive need of this family for the protagonist's servitude. In this narrative, the maid's sole responsibility was to stand aside and proclaim, "The young master hasn't smiled like this in a long time." The management of others' needs, including the male lead's clothing and tie choices, fell entirely upon the heroine. In order to illustrate the family's disarray following the protagonist's demise, the plot required her to cater to these overgrown infants. Only then would Chin father realize how long it had been since he had savored a hangover remedy. Chin mother noticed the absence of soothing massages, and the brother acknowledged that his room had long been neglected. The male lead would find himself disoriented by the lack of attention and unsure of how to tie a tie. Was this not merely the result of losing a free maid? How miserly these capitalists are. Chin's father and mother were certainly unable to manipulate me with an allowance, and perhaps they were deterred from taking any rash actions following my outburst. The police's intervention had instilled in them a sense of regret for their overt abuse. However, they did not truly repent. Instead, they chose to sneak into my makeshift room, where I slept under the cover of night, and stealthily extract the SIM card from my phone. They reveled in their cunning, convinced that if the phone were to go missing, I would undoubtedly notice immediately. But without the SIM card, I would be rendered unable to contact the outside world. I feigned sleep, my eyes barely open, observing their actions, feeling as though I were cursed. Why must I be compelled to engage in a battle of wits with a group of illogical NPCs? A noteworthy fact: a mobile phone without a SIM card or signal does not impede the ability to dial emergency numbers such as 110, 120, or 119. This is a vital piece of knowledge that all readers and authors should bear in mind. The following day, the shoe shining session commenced as scheduled. Lin Yuan, come here and shine my shoes. I'll reward you with 10 yuan. Silently, I activated the recording function on my outdated phone, feigning disbelief as I responded. On what grounds should I shine your shoes? You, a mere country bumpkin, should be grateful for the opportunity one provided to earn some money. In the original text, he had mockingly pointed out the protagonist's ignorance regarding high-end shoe care tools. Am I your maid? Qin Haonan smiled confidently. Countless people would vie for the chance to be a maid in the Qin household, yet you have it. Brother, the neurology department at City One Hospital is quite reputable. Perhaps you should consider a consultation. Otherwise, I truly cannot comprehend why anyone would vie for a job with no labor contract that could lead to severe injuries or require a financial outlay of thousands for a position that offers no security. At this moment, Qin Wan interjected, Sister, brother only means well. You are so impoverished. He is merely offering you a chance to earn. It is we who have erred. We should have handed you the money outright. Moreover, it was I who took your life. Brother, let me shine the shoes for you. According to the protagonist's nature, Qin Wan's insinuation that she wished to profit without effort would have previously prompted her to rush forward. Yet, I stood unmoving, gazing innocently at her with wide eyes, patiently awaiting her to take the initiative to shine Qin Haonan's shoes. Qin Wan stood awkwardly, frozen in place until Shun Chen's arrival. You, such a crude woman, are not fit to even compare with Wanwan. Do not presume that just because you hold the title of my fiancé, you can bully her. It was as if I were an NPC programmed to trigger specific dialogues in designated scenarios. Perhaps my disdain was too overt as I gazed at him. Although Shun Chen maintained his composure, he could not help but follow my line of sight to inspect his own attire. Upon turning to see Qin Wan gazing at him with an expression of admiration, he quickly regained his confidence. Shun Chen wore a rather amused expression and uttered the classic line of a domineering CEO, Woman, your attempts at seduction are of no consequence to me. As those words reverberated before me, my hair stood on end, goosebumps cascaded across my body, and my toes involuntarily curled. It was truly shocking. I couldn't help but admire the author who could conjure such phrases. Respect. What a formidable charisma. Even if Daniel Wu were to utter those words in front of me, I could not accept them. A wave of nausea surged from my stomach, prompting me to hastily retreat towards the restroom. Ugh. The other three individuals were immediately petrified. The Shun family maintained a close relationship with the Qin family, which is why, upon the protagonist's birth, the patriarch of the Qin family established a will. The shares, properties, and antiques under his name were to be inherited by the descendants of the children from the Shun and Qin families. The original protagonist was bullied at school for usurping Shun Chen's fiancé status, becoming the target of Qin Wan and Shun Chen's lackeys. This animosity intensified particularly after the original protagonist secured a guaranteed admission to the Academy of Fine Arts due to her artistic talent, leading to the first climax of the narrative. The protagonist was falsely accused of plagiarism by Qin Wan, who subsequently utilized the protagonist's work to gain her own admission. Although Qin Haonan and Shin Chun were aware of Qin Wan's acts of plagiarism, they still chose to shield her. They told the protagonist, You have taken away Wanwan's position as a wealthy heiress and usurped the fiancé status of the heir to the Shin family. Consider this your compensation to Wanwan. How outrageous. Thus, when the male lead and his brother shamelessly demanded that I refrain from pursuing the matter regarding Chinwon and instead shoulder the blame for the alleged plagiarism while transferring the admission slot to Chinwon. I truly felt my dignity was trampled and my intelligence insulted. Must I conform to such a plot to earn a chance at resurrection? I refuse. On what grounds do you demand I relinquish my rightful honor to Chinwon? Are we even acquainted? I spat at Shin Chen, regarding him with utter disdain. You are my fiancé. We are one entity. What is yours is mine, and I possess the right to dispose of our shared possessions. Am I giving you face? Or what? Don't you have a mirror at home? Go take a look at your own ugly mug. The vulgarity of my retort left Shin Chen with an incredulous expression. No wonder I agreed to exchange fiancés as soon as I returned. It seems you had this idea in mind. What's mine is yours. How absurdly arrogant of you. The Shin family truly has no shame. At this moment, I remembered that standing beside Shin Chen was the protagonist's brother, Chin Haonan.
Oh.
I had nearly forgotten that the protagonist was not without options. Sir, I am quite astonished by your indifference to such a disgraceful statement regarding the heir of the Shin family. Perhaps you are not truly a member of the Chin family? Are you willing to relinquish billions in assets? After a brief hesitation, Chin Haonan donned an expression of disdain typical of NPCs. Do not attempt to sow discord. The decision to transfer the admission slot to Wonwon is final. Very well. It seems this fool is truly beyond help. The scandal of plagiarism had reached its zenith. With all eyes in the school scrutinizing me after I mercilessly berated Shin Chen and Chin Haonan, they incited their followers to stir the pot, and alongside Chin Won's clique. I could hear whispers about me wherever I went. As for Chin Haonan's threats of expulsion, I remained unfazed. Please, if one is unafraid of death, would they fear expulsion? But this unjust blame is a burden I shall never bear. For in this world, it is certainly not I who deserves to perish. That afternoon after school, just as I contemplated how to seize the opportunity to expose Chinwon, I found myself surrounded by a group of students sporting yellow, red, and rainbow hair. The Shin family held considerable influence in the capital, and their ranks were not lacking in sycophantic lackeys. Little sister, I hear you've offended young Master Shin? Why would you oppose him, being his fiancé? The consequences are something you cannot bear. I paid no heed to this group of punks, discreetly inputting a familiar sequence of 3 digits into my phone. Thankfully, my estranged parents had only taken the SIM card and left the phone behind.
Huh?
Has Shinchin sent you to bully me on campus? Campus bullying is such a harsh term. We are merely here to educate young Master Shin's fiancé. Did he instruct you to ambush me at 6 o'clock this afternoon in the alley behind Jinghuang High School, demanding that I obediently admit to plagiarizing Chinwon and transfer my admission slot to her? Couples are like birds of a feather. They fight in bed but reconcile shortly after. Why make such a fuss with your husband? The ruffian leered at me with malicious intent. How much did Shin Chen offer you? I can pay you double. The leader of the thugs scoffed. What Shin Chen can offer, you, a country bumpkin, cannot match. With that, they attempted to advance towards me with ill intentions. You really are a bunch of fools. Noticing my lack of fear and my retort, the thugs paused. I am Shin Chen's fiancé, as well as a lady of the Chin family. Although you were summoned by Shin Chen, have you considered that attacking the fiancé of the heir to the Shin family and causing a scandal between the Shin and Chin families will not end well for you? Shin Chen never regarded you as brothers. You are merely pawns being played. The thugs hesitated, but then a cold voice broke through. You have quite the silver tongue. It seems you have yet to learn your lesson. Shin Chen had arrived. I was concerned that the police would come and not find Shin Chen, but here he was, presenting himself. I feigned fear, retreating until I reached the mouth of the alley. This display seemed to amuse Shin Chen. He reached out, stroking my face with curiosity. If you had only listened sooner, this could have been avoided. You truly need to learn a lesson. With that, he yanked my hair. This beast. As my fiancé, you are only to heed my words, understand? Understand? What nonsense. He forcefully grasped my face and signaled his lackeys to encircle me, preventing my escape. I scratched at him in retaliation, leaving several blood marks on his face. Just then, a police car with flashing red and blue lights spotted the commotion at the alley's entrance and stopped outside the north gate. 4 officers approached directly. They pushed aside Shin Chen's lackeys, revealing me in the center, my face marked with red imprints from his grip. What are you doing? The officers pulled Shin Chen away. And upon noticing his noncompliance, they swiftly cuffed him. I am merely disciplining my fiancé. Mind your own business. The officers glanced at me, still clad in my school uniform, and recognized me as a familiar face from previous incidents. Angrily, one of them exclaimed, "She is clearly a minor." "What fiancé? This looks like you are instigating trouble and engaging in campus bullying." He then turned to his fellow officers and commanded, "Take him away." Due to the crowd, the police station dispatched 4 additional patrol cars to sufficiently transport everyone involved. Shun Chin insisted that I was his fiancé, claiming that the engagement had been arranged by our grandfathers, thus rendering it merely a family affair. However, the police were not swayed by such arguments. "Young man, I suggest you familiarize yourself with the law. According to Article 1042 of the Civil Code, the arrangement, sale, and interference in marriage freedom are prohibited. Article 1046 stipulates, marriage must be entered into voluntarily by both parties, with any form of coercion or interference from individuals or organizations strictly prohibited. That young girl has not only failed to reach the legal marriage age of 20, but she is still a minor. The so-called will and marriage contract you speak of are in violation of the law and thus hold no legal validity. Do you understand?" It is indeed refreshing to hear such words from a knowledgeable and cultured individual. The grievances I endured at the hands of the protagonist's family have finally dissipated. Shin Chun, accompanied by a group of subordinates, encircled and harmed a minor like me, which had a profoundly negative impact. Although the Shun family quickly intervened, the police still had Shin Chun and his minions spend 2 days and nights in a holding cell at the police station. Following this incident, perhaps Shin Chun learned a lesson, for he no longer dared to flaunt himself in my presence. To my further relief, the police uncovered the truth behind the plagiarism, dispelling the rumors. Faced with the authorities, Chin Won initially attempted to struggle in vain, but I am not as voiceless as the original protagonist. Chin Won, you have consistently accused me of plagiarism, yet your evidence consists of photos you posted on social media. It is well known that we live under the same roof, making it quite simple for you to sneakily photograph my artwork and post it online. This evidence is rather flimsy, wouldn't you agree? Therefore, I offer you an opportunity. Let us recreate this painting in front of witnesses and explain our inspirations to everyone. What do you say?" Chin Won was entirely unprepared for this turn of events, stammering and at a loss for words. Observant individuals could easily discern the underlying deceit. If she were to stubbornly agree to my proposal, she might even turn the tables on me. I am not the original protagonist. Thus, I am completely unaware of her artistic intentions or creations. Moreover, my artistic skills are limited to drawing stick figures, making it impossible for me to replicate her work. Such a rudimentary tactic, if uttered, could easily be clarified. Yet the author would dare to label it as an irrefutable conundrum. Clearly, one must have been kicked by a donkey to think so. The system incessantly warned me that the plot had deviated significantly, and the hope of reaching a conclusion was exceedingly slim. Yet, I remained unfazed. I had begun to derive pleasure from slapping the face of the dim-witted protagonist. Whether I lived or died was no longer of importance. Annihilating all was the priority. After 3 months of tranquility, they inevitably began to stir again. At this juncture, the story neared its climax. Chinwa was diagnosed with uremia and required an urgent kidney transplant, and shockingly, the test results indicated that I was the most compatible donor. In the original narrative, the excessively neglected female lead, under the moral coercion of her parents and the sweet-nothings from the male lead, consented to the transplant. They assured her that this would be the last time, after which Chin-won would no longer be considered a member of the Chin family. Henceforth, they would love only the female lead. However, following the transplant surgery, this group of people turned their backs on her. The female lead, struggling with her recovery, was subsequently diagnosed with cancer and, in despair, chose to leave these cold-hearted individuals, ultimately perishing in a foreign land. This segment of the plot is rife with flaws, such as how 2 individuals with no blood relation could so easily match for a transplant, especially as competitors. Yet, this very storyline managed to elicit tears from readers. Unfortunately, my actions altered the narrative, transforming this segment beyond recognition. Qin Haonan forcibly brought me aboard the Shin family's vessel, administering a drugged beverage before handing me over to Shin-Chen. To mask their intentions, they even brought along my parents, masquerading as a family outing. Shinchin confined me in a small storage room at the bottom of the ship and, having learned from previous mistakes, confiscated my dilapidated mobile phone. Finally, this time, they could ensnare everyone neatly. They secretly transported me with cargo to a hospital, bribing a physician handsomely to perform the transplant surgery for both Qin and me. Prior to the operation, Shinchin brought Qin to my ward and indignantly exclaimed, "Last time, you refused to allow Wan to take your reserved spot. Now that she is ill, your kidney will serve as compensation. If you agree to the transplant, I will consent to marry you. All your recent antics have merely been a ruse to entice me, haven't they?" I was utterly taken aback by his overwhelming confidence.
Goodness.
One can hardly imagine how cheerful I would be if I possessed such self-assurance. I have always been curious about what I owe her. Was it because her mother swapped our identities and, in a sense, stole her destitute, patriarchal, and abusive parents? Or was it due to my exceptional abilities, which allowed me to secure a reserved spot despite growing up in adversity, thereby overshadowing the noble status of the young lady? Enraged, Qin lunged at me, attempting to slap my face. Just as her hand was about to make contact, I swiftly grasped her wrist and redirected her own hand back to her face.
Slap.
Her fair complexion instantly reddened and swelled. Shinchin, distressed, pulled the now swollen Qin away and shouted at the doctor, "Commence the surgery immediately." As the doctor approached me, I calmly began to stall. "Doctor, are you certain you want to proceed with the surgery without conducting a physical examination and under non-sterile conditions?" To avoid detection, they had neglected to arrange for my pre-surgical assessment. I, for one, am not concerned. After all, if I happen to transmit any diseases like AIDS, syphilis, hepatitis B, or C to my sworn enemy, I would consider it a fitting end. Shinchin angrily retorted, "Do you think I am unaware of your health status?" "That is not a certainty," I replied, clicking my tongue. Individuals from elite families often harbor monstrous hearts beneath charming facades, leading chaotic private lives. Since I have never taken our engagement seriously, how would I know if I had not been with someone else in the interim? That little blonde fellow seemed rather appealing. After saying this, I feigned remorse, saying, "Alas, I should not have mentioned so much. Had I kept silent, it would have already reached Qin." I adopted an expression of profound regret. Shun Chen's face darkened, seemingly unable to fathom that I genuinely held no feelings for him. Qin, too, was rendered speechless by my audacity. "Doctor, perhaps we should conduct a blood test to alleviate the fright," she stammered. In the original narrative, Qin was, in fact, healthy and did not require a transplant. This entire charade was merely to teach the female lead a lesson. However, to deceive others, she insisted that the doctor administer a transfusion from me, whose blood type was O, in front of witnesses. What kind of malevolent female antagonist would knowingly risk her health to accept a transfusion while being perfectly healthy? It can only be said that Qin is a villain devoid of any lowly tastes, a pure embodiment of evil. It is a testament to the author's skill that such a character could be crafted. Just as they hesitated over whether to take the risk of sending me for a blood test, the police, following the clues I provided, finally arrived at the hospital. Thus unfolded the scene at the beginning of the story. Shinchin was astonished that the police had located us so swiftly. How is this possible? I had arranged everything flawlessly. There should have been no chance of detection. One could only say, with such intelligence, he dared to contend with me. This was child's play. "How did you manage to call the police without even a phone?" Given his earnest inquiry, I felt magnanimous enough to reveal the answer. I waved the inconspicuous little genius phone watch on my wrist, its color dull and its strap worn. At first glance, it seemed merely an ordinary watch. Yet it possessed not only an alarm function but also GPS tracking capabilities. I had procured it secondhand for a hefty sum of 300 yuan from a primary school student. Technology truly saves lives. On that day, nearly the entire building of patients and their families gathered to witness this extraordinary scene. The police escorted a pair of elegantly dressed individuals, adorned in costly attire, alongside a disheveled doctor in a white coat, into a police vehicle, which then sped away. The man at the forefront was heard proclaiming, "I am the heir of the Beijing elite. You have offended me, and be wary of the consequences." This spectacle was naturally captured by onlookers, and in an age where even octogenarians engage in social media, the video quickly began to circulate. Encountering the Beijing heir being taken away by the police at a hospital, does anyone recognize him? Is he truly a prince, behaving so arrogantly before the authorities? Within 2 hours, the video surged to prominence, spreading across various platforms. Despite the Shun family's urgent attempts to have the video removed, they could not curb the public's fascination. A considerable number of netizens developed a rebellious spirit. The more they tried to delete it, the more determined they became, fueled by a sense of mission to challenge the powerful. Consequently, the Shun family found themselves unable to leverage connections to extricate their kin. Blocking keywords? Utterly futile. Users concocted a plethora of phonetic abbreviations and codes to circumvent restrictions. Moreover, screenshots of Shin and Shinwan's faces were transformed into memes, disseminating widely across the internet. Of course, the online community remained unaware of their actual names, referring to them as Prince Brother and Princess Sister. Before long, their personal details were fully exposed, thrusting the Shun group into the eye of a storm. When did the Shun group become emperors? I suggest the government rigorously investigate the Shun group for a return to feudalism. Goodness, I am utterly mortified by Prince Brother. How could anyone audaciously call themselves the heir of Beijing? Employees of the Shun group assert that this is just their eccentricity. His father calls himself the Emperor of Beijing and his mother the Empress, convening meetings as if they were court sessions. This is so embarrassing. I could bury my toes in the ground. Boycott the Shun group. Let us not forget the Qin family. They are no saints either. In an instant, their stock prices plummeted. The Shun family's public relations team was in a frenzy, and Shun's mother, cornered, called me, demanding I step forward to clarify the situation. Auntie, if you've lost your mind, seek help at a mental institution. I am not a doctor and cannot treat your family's madness. Riding the wave. I registered a social media account and released a collection of explosive audio and video recordings I had secretly gathered over time. I also penned an impassioned essay denouncing their unjust treatment and illegal activities, concluding with my suspicions regarding the Shun and Qin family's tax evasion. Ultimately, I invested a substantial sum of 500 to promote it. Why should I polish your shoes? You, a mere country bumpkin, should be grateful for the opportunity one provide you to earn. Thanks to this explosive audio clip, my brother Qin Haonan also gained notoriety, earning the title shoe shiner brother from netizens. Now, the Qin family could not evade scrutiny either. In a swift turn of events, both the Qin and Shun families were ousted from their positions of power by the board and shareholders, urgently issuing an apology. A salient fact, publicly listed companies are not solely ruled by their founders. Yet, all this proved futile. On a sunny day, these two families closely followed their deeply cherished children, reuniting in the police station. Guess who was not invited?
Me.
Once again, I found myself isolated from this ostensibly loving family, relegated to a solitary existence in the cold, vast villa, engulfed in endless solitude. At this moment, I finally grasped the agony reflected in the original story's conclusion. Gazing at the desolate home, I dabbed at the non-existent tears at the corners of my eyes with a silk handkerchief. Before their final sentencing, Qin's parents specifically requested to see me. I declined. They sent the police to inquire, with the Qin and Shun families wielding such power and influence, what means did you employ to garner everyone's support? Because they deserve their fate, of course. They could not fathom that there existed a multitude of ordinary individuals with a deep-seated sense of justice. They merely looked down upon all the common people they had oppressed and bullied. Worse still, some derived pleasure from the oppression of others, fantasizing about being part of the elite. This led to the creation of numerous works that vilified the impoverished while glorifying the affluent. It is only when you expose their false facade that you unveil the ugly darkness hidden beneath their glitzy exterior. Though Qin Wan is flawed, the true antagonist of this narrative should not be her but rather her abusive parents, Qin father and Qin mother, and the bullies Qin Haonan and Shin Chen, as well as the avaricious Shun family. They are the ones who nurtured Qin Wan's dark heart, fostering her ugly humanity, becoming her support in her misdeeds. Thus, the most effective means of addressing them is to subject them to the judgment of the people and the sanctions of the law. Only the educational power of law enforcement can genuinely lead them to repentance. 3 months later, a special legal program was produced by the Central Television Station to address this intricate case. After all, a case that intertwines human trafficking, abuse, illegal medical practices, defamation, and tax evasion is indeed a rare occurrence. The 4-hour program meticulously unraveled the entire narrative, detailing the roles each individual played and educating viewers on their respective punishments, which ranged from 10 years to mere months. Legal tidbit: in China, minors aged 14 and older are also subject to criminal responsibility. In the video, my adoptive parents, biological parents, Qin Haonan, Qin Wan, and Shinshin appeared before the camera in striped prison uniforms, weeping profusely while confessing their transgressions. Meanwhile, I couldn't help but laugh at their buzz cuts and grim faces. At that moment, the long silent system suddenly announced the completion of my task, granting me permission to return to reality. I was momentarily taken aback, realizing there was such a method of task completion. The system further revealed that, although the previous 17 travelers had reached their conclusions, they had not fulfilled their redemption tasks. I was the sole individual to accomplish it. Epilogue: upon the conclusion of the task, I successfully extricated myself from this world. Before departing, I inquired of the system. If the previous 17 travelers reached their conclusions but failed to complete the hidden tasks, does that mean they cannot return to reality? Your system is excessively harsh. It disregards human life. The system cleared its throat, slightly embarrassed, and explained, in truth, this is an immersive VR legal education game developed by the authorities. By experiencing the importance of law through the protagonist's journey in the novel, it educates young people to courageously resist injustice, understand, and abide by the law. None of you will perish. Rather, upon entering the game, you are designated as having already died in reality to encourage players to continue the gameplay. The earlier travelers, being younger, were deeply influenced by such novels and believed that the original plot was logically sound. Although they did not fulfill their tasks, they were inspired by witnessing your success and have now returned to reality. I couldn't help but roll my eyes. While this was indeed educational, I felt perpetually like a pawn in their game. Welcome back to a society governed by law. Thus, I became the first player to successfully complete this game.
The end.
Thank you for listening. We shall meet again in the next story.